So, hello guys, it's another episode of Enter the Matrix, but it's something new this time because when usually I talk to a captain and actually interview them about their team, we're taking quite a spin in our approach and we're trying to get into more topics about team events. So, right now and today, we'll be talking about how we see the whole meta, the changes of the game after the Arks of Omen. Most of you are probably still thinking about LVO, whilst us three, we don't give a fuck. That's how I guess. I mean, maybe we care whether actually somebody from England wins ITC and the US hegemony is getting turned down, but like that's all.
Yes, yeah.
And
There's a few that could actually win it. I mean, Vic, and not that he's in. He's plays a lot. They're all top 4, I think. So if they do well, they have a chance.
Yeah, the Commonwealth.
Yeah. So how are you guys doing? I know, Liam, you're probably very proud of yourself of fucking over some people with a weird list that they had no clue how it works.
I'm very proud. I'm also very, very tired. And if anybody hears me drinking or eating, it's because I need a large amount of caffeine to get out of bed. So that's kind of the other emotion that I'm feeling at the moment.
And you, Josh, you preparing for some games or
yeah, good. I mean,
tournament or
yeah, I think as we said, so like my team within the Team England stuff, half of them are still going over to LVO, so they haven't. They've looked at the new Omen stuff, of course, but they've probably not tried to confuse themselves too much with tweaks to secondaries, and they're still probably playing Thousand Suns Flamers or whatever they're playing to try and win the event. So they haven't looked at it much. And then a few of us were also at Nottingham GT, which was a big one in the UK with 380 players. And that,
yeah, I think
because
was it like third biggest ever after LVO or second biggest ever?
Something like that, yeah. I mean, it's for the UK. It's certainly the second biggest event we've ever had in the UK.
That's awesome. That's a huge event.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah, I mean, it's. Zach's LGT is the biggest for us. I know he's trying to beat LVO. I think he got close to them last year, and he's hoping he can be bigger than them this year. We'll see. But yeah, Nottingham. Generally, most of his other events are around the 150 man, but for maybe 200. Leicester was big as well, 220 or something like that. But yeah, Nottingham got up to nearly 400. So that was a really big event. But because of the date of Nottingham was the same weekend as the release of Omens, so it was using old rules. Because officially it hadn't been released yet, and list submission was the week before. So yeah, a lot of people, we were playing that, and then as soon as that's gone, it's your army list is thrown in the bin, and you start again. So
completely binned. Start again. Yeah. Just burn it all down and start all over again.
Yeah.
Unless
there'll be some players that maybe it's still got some lists, but yeah, a lot of the lists have definitely changed for sure. Massive changes.
So, like, coming to the topic of Arks of Omen, how do you guys feel about it? Do you like it overall, or do you have mixed feelings?
Do you want to go first, Josh, or do you want me to go?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think for me, I think overall I like it. There's a few things that have they quite thought through. Like when they launched it, they of course didn't clarify how things like Abaddon worked or other characters. They've now at least FAQ'd that. So there's still a few things.
Not all of it.
So not all of it. You listed some of them and then left others. You're like, yeah, Gazgul can stay in the bin. He's not allowed to come out to play yet. And then there's a few other things where I think they've tried to do a lot of changes and they've probably not quite combined all their thinking. So like Marines is an obvious example. I think the Codex Warfare secondary, I suspect they wrote that before they decided to let you stay in Devastator Doctrine for the whole game. Because why do you get 2 points for Devastator Doc and 1 point for the other two when things like Iron Hands and Dark Angels never leave that doctrine now?
This man's got a spy. This man's got a spy in Nottingham.
Yeah, clearly there's a few things that aren't quite linked up. And there's a few other ones like I feel for, say, Demon players who their Warp Storm is so, how do you actually access it now unless you go a pure Tzeentch or pure Khorne? You don't get any access anymore. I'm surprised they didn't give them the option to have a patrol added. So there's a few bits that just don't seem to quite make sense. But overall, I think it's nice to actually see Marines on the table again, which, I mean, you haven't seen them in, I mean, competitively.
Since
really.
like Drukari came out.
Yeah,
that's when they
died. You saw Blood Angels. That's about it. And even then, Blood Angels weren't necessarily winning events. You didn't see it. You didn't see vanilla Marines really in any case. And then of course, some of the win percentages for things like Harleys was high, so they've tried to tackle that, and an interesting way of tackling it rather than just another points hit or another faction or sub-faction nerf. I think the Flamer FAQ was quite an elegant one, rather than just...
I like that one, actually.
Yeah, rather than just pointing them into oblivion, actually making them have to roll to hit. I think that probably changes them quite nicely. So I think overall, they've done a pretty good job, and I think the flyer change is quite a nice change, because there's the Tau flyers and Nid flyers were oppressively good, and everybody else's were terrible, pretty much. There was the argument maybe for Doom sides or a Night side with the options in Necrons with the teleporting, but other than that, when's the last time you saw a Storm Raven or any other flyer?
So I saw 172 of them.
Yes, yeah. That one event where the Storm Ravens were the everything, and then after that, they've pretty much gone downhill. So
literally in the skies over Terra was the last time that Typhus saw a Storm Raven, when they were all there.
Yeah.
And the only other one is that seems a little bit harsh is I think GW clearly didn't want to sell any more Tyranids. So they've decided that Tyranids have had their day, and let's nerf them in multiple ways at the same time and see what happens. So that was a little bit surprising how hard they went on them. But I guess they did have a good win rate about 6 months ago.
Overall, I think, like Josh, I'm pretty positive about it. I think that it's a step in the right direction, but like a lot of GW steps, it's kind of a bit of a drunken, haphazard step that maybe falls over along the way. Because, I mean, one of my big complaints about this game, pretty much since I started playing competitively in like 2018, 2017, was that whenever you get an FAQ, whenever you get a points update, there's absolutely no consistency in how they want to try and balance things. And what you mentioned, Josh, about Tyranids is a prime example. Let's give Tyranids a nerf in 3 different ways. Let's give Necrons a nerf in one way. Let's give Harlequins a nerf in one way, but not the same as another faction's points increases. Let's change their core rules. And then let's update the secondaries for some factions, but other ones get nerfed. Basically, my complaint about Arks of Omen is the same as it's been consistently with other GW rules, where there's no metric to start balancing the armies. There's no like, all armies got points adjustments, and so therefore we can balance the game this way. Some armies got points changes, some armies got rules changes, some armies got secondary changes, and so we're in the same boat we were before, where it's difficult to know where things stand until we gain a lot more data. I've been saying for a very long time, if you balance all armies via GW the same way, we would be having a much more robust conversation. You could even talk percentages about how things have actually changed for everything, rather than some armies having subjective changes rather than objective changes. That's kind of really my only complaint.
I have one complaint, which they hinted that they will like revamp primary play and the missions, and they did not do that, which I find annoying because the game can get quite stale. Like, obviously, the meta
what's up
changes.
With that? They even said they were going to do it.
That feels like maybe they went, actually, we're going to save that for 10th. That's what that decision feels like. They went, this is a good idea. Let's not.
On 4-up, you do not get that CP. Impactful.
Big change.
Yeah, so that's my main issue with it. Like, I was really looking into Arks to actually get a little bit rejuvenated with different playstyle coming in, like even different missions. Like, let's have more missions where you move objectives, please, or anything that you can actually change your gameplay when playing the same mission and the same pairing. But it didn't happen, so that's my main complaint. But overall, with the meta changes, I'm happy in the sense that it's something new. It's a breath of fresh air. when I think with the previous changes and new armies coming out, like the Metal Flamers, Harleys, and Newts, I felt like it was getting quite stale as well.
Yes,
It was really repetitive, and I couldn't figure out a new army that I just wanted to play, which wasn't one of those three, which is not fun.
So. Yeah, it's definitely one of those. If the meta gets to a stage where you're like, if I don't play one of X number of armies, 1, 2, 3, however many it is at the time, I can't compete. I just know I hit a brick wall. It's never a fun experience from a singles point of view, at least. Different in teams, of course, because you can avoid certain matchups, but from a singles point, you're like, oh, if your army's like, I just can't play Harleys, and you know that Harleys are popular in the current meta because they've got a high win rate, then you're like, well, okay, I'm probably going
to I think it's even worse in win draw lose system than 20-0. In 20-0, you could make an argument to actually scrape for points, which is why I think LVO probably will be very random at the same time. There's such a hard rock, paper, scissors right now with like T-Sense basically bullying Harleys. Kraken can bully everything, but can lose badly to Tau or Votan, which is like...
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of... That's what
it feels out of the control of the players, right? Like sometimes, especially for an event of that size, you can theoretically have a run where you never play Tau or Votan. Probably not Votan, because everyone and their dog seems to have some Votan models at the moment. But, you know, with the rock, paper, scissors, especially pre Arks of Omen, I do feel like LVO is going to be like, when we look at people who've had 8-0 runs, I think it'll be important to look at the path to victory, which is always an important conversation to have before declaring that something's broken or getting an FAQ for your FAQ again and changing it like they did with those jolly plasma inceptors.
Oh, that was a terrible, like, they didn't even announce it. They didn't even mark it in red on the document.
That was so funny. I laughed so hard when they were like, oh, we're really sorry for the heavy bolter toting brothers, but they're getting cheated by some points. And I'm just like, oh, don't try and add some fluff text to this. You messed up. You know you did. Like,
yeah, exactly.
I loved how it was combined with the guard FAQ, the 2019 or 18 guard FAQ.
Yeah, they put up a guard FAQ that's the old one, and they're like, that's not legal. That doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
Yeah, so typical GW. Janitor got closed in a closet again and had no clue what's happening. Well, what a surprise. So, coming to the topic that I wanted to talk with you guys about, I think the changes actually are quite nice when it comes to teams. I think all of our conceptions we had about like 8-man teams right now got thrown into a bin because some armies that were quite a staple beforehand, let's say Tau, got hit significantly on multiple levels. And you can make arguments that certain armies got worse, better, etc. And it's still fluid. We do not have data. So I think it's a great moment to actually have conversation. I know, Liam, you have more data than Josh. We have a little bit from our training weekend in Poland, where we met with the national team. So what I wanted to ask is actually, I've assigned some pre-work to every one of us to actually talk what our top 8 is, and I have no clear idea how we will go with it. So I just imagine we'll go with the flow and just talk what we see. And is there anyone who wants to start with theirs, or anything you want to say beforehand?
Oh, I've got a pretty good idea, because I was having a think about it on my flight home from Uprising, about like how the top 8 looks, and I think it's pretty firmly Imperium focused for me at the moment. Like I think we're very much back in the direction of the Imperium. Like I'm biased. I think Custodes got a huge benefit in the Arks of Omen book. Yeah, I think Custodes are back to being, frankly, pants on head silly, because they're just, the amount of armies. Sorry, a brief tangent, I suppose. With singles, how it is at the moment, and how prevalent Marines of all flavors are, Blood Angels, Dark Angels, Space Wolves, etc. All Marine factions, in some way or another, rely on rerolls to hit or to wound to do damage. Like that's just how it is. I mean, the Iron Hands chapter tactic is what it is because of reroll ones army wide. And, when we're touching on Codex Warfare, again, that really works when you get full rerolls to hit, rerolls to wound. And the fact that Custodes can just turn off rerolls to hit, wound, and damage now at will, and they start with 3 more CP per list if you want to take a Vanguard, which is what I was doing anyway, I think just puts them in such an awesome spot. In addition to that, Armor of Contempt made Custodes feel bad. And now that there's no Armor of Contempt, they feel like a Custody again. Having a 2-up, 4-up isn't just like worse than a Marine. Like it's not just worse than a Sangard, which is which was always like feeling bad for Custodes. So I think Custody stocks are really high. The other thing that's great about Custodes from either a teams or singles perspective is it's one of the cheapest armies in 40k to build, paint, and play. And so from like an adaptability perspective, if I was playing an event in a week's time, I could go out, buy 10 Alaris, paint them, build them in. Well, again, my standard of painting is extraordinarily low. I think, Josh, you've seen some of my models. They are exceptionally battle ready, let's just say. But I could definitely get the army done in a short span of time.
On the flight.
Literally on the flight. I would get taken out by airline security. Literally
taking that gold spray on the flight, see if you can get away with it.
The gold spray, see if I get away with it. I'm chrome myself, but like,
Witness me.
Witness me. I'm eternal, shiny, and gold. But in my army for Uprising, for example, all of the bases for my army were literally, there's a hardware store in Australia called Bunnings, which is basically a national icon. So my army bases for Uprising were Bunnings Granite Effect spray paint, which actually looks like I lined all the bases up and I sprayed them all, 20 seconds or less, bases for a whole 2,000 point army done. I'm here to get the army done. Anyway, that's my point about Custodes, that you can definitely play them quickly. And I think for teams, I think they can fulfill a variety of different niches. I mean, that Dreadnought shooting army that was at WTC, played by Siegler, is still a potent list in teams. I think an infantry spam list, like I was playing with Big Blobs at Uprising, is a really potent teams list as well. So Custodes stocks for me are high. Yeah, other than that, Dark Angels. I'm sorry, I played them twice at Uprising. One was a little bit of a meme. One was actually really, really challenging. But either way, the fact that you can just have Dark Angel bikers move 17 for an entire game makes me feel like I'm playing Harlequins that are really, really angry, which is just
or 23 and have -1 to hit.
Yeah, and a 4-up invo to shooting attacks, and I'm like,
so like Harleys.
Like old Harleys, but with 3 damage plasma guns, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's cool, no worries. So Custodes, Dark Angels, and then Imperial Knights. I do not understand how Imperial Knights got through the Arks of Omen book without any nerfs whatsoever. In fact, with the changes to grind them down behind enemy lines and whatnot, you could argue they got a significant buff as well, because an Armiger kills a unit and you get more CP, which just seems to be a little bit oppressive. So like that's already, I guess, for me, where my top 3 is at. Beyond that, Guard. I think Guard are going to be a staple in the meta. A lot of people have Guard, but also in a teams environment, I think you need a specific toolbox to shut down an optimized Imperial Guard list. And if you don't have those tools, I think, obviously, even that statement alone proves they're good for a team's meta. So half of my dream team list is already just Imperium armies on its own. The 5th one, I think, is actually, I think Grey Knights. I think Grey Knights are actually in an amazing spot at the moment. And I say that because the amount of other psychic armies that were contending with them, Tyranids and Thousand Suns, got nerfed almost into oblivion in Arks of Omen. And I think because of that, you kind of have it rising as the preeminent psychic army, the preeminent mortal wounds in the psychic phase army. But also, GK shooting suffered from Armor of Contempt immensely. It's all AP1, it's all AP2. And even though it can ignore cover, it was really struggling to get through Armor of Contempt.
Yeah, sure.
So that's kind of my 5. After that, I think it gets a bit nebulous. I actually still think Tao's in a really, really good spot. I disagree that the plain nerf put Tau in the bin, because I think that mobility, extremely high AP shooting, and amazingly good secondaries are still part and parcel with the Tau game. And after that, I kind of think it's anyone's bet, like whatever tech a team needs. But even just rattling off factions, I think at least 4 or 5 of the factions in a team will be Imperium. You know, Orcs, Tyranids, Drakari, Eldar. I'm not sure where any of those factions sit at the moment, to be perfectly honest. They definitely were beating almost all of the Imperium factions that I mentioned, you know, 3 months ago. But where we are now, I'm not sure. I think the Imperium's come back.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think the Imperium's certainly got a boost. The Guard, I want to see the FAQ before I fully decide where Guard sit. I mean, if they keep the stupid mortal wounds and all that sort of stuff, you're like, okay, they're really good. If GW decide to be harsh on them, it could hurt them a bit more, and they might move down.
Reasonable.
Yeah, they'll be reasonable then. Yeah, as you say. But right now, if you play a pure Codex, you look at it and go, "Oh, that's a fun combo to play into. Great." So, I mean, I think I agree. I think Custodes. I'm surprised more people are not talking about Custodes. Like, yeah, I guess if you were the traditional, you ran all the bikes, then they didn't really benefit. They didn't get access to any of the strats again. They didn't get any of those buffs back. But as you said, I think the inventory list is really cool. And I think it's nice that you can go to that Solar Watch because there's a lot less, like there's not the Thousand Suns pumping out stupid amounts of mortal wounds, or the NIDs, which for Custodes, like if you didn't play Emperor's Chosen, you're like, well, I can't, I'll just die. I just get wiped off the table.
Your one squad of Sister of Silence is not going to save you from that entire army. You might want it to, but it doesn't.
Yes, exactly. So I think that's opened up for sure Custodes, because a lot of that mortal wound spam is gone. GK can still do it, but I still would say they can't do it like Thousand Suns used to be able to do it, or I mean, Thousand Suns can still do it. I mean, there's nothing to stop people taking Thousand Suns to do that, but Thousand Suns have been hit in other ways, secondaries significantly. The Flamer combo they can't take in anywhere near the same threat that it was.
And mental interrogation, right? Like as a T-Suns player myself, I even though Mutate Landscape was a great secondary, mental interrogation was just so good for T-Suns because you could like massively buff their casting values and like farm free CP and make it undeniable. And it was just such a great secondary for them. And now it's back to visible again. It's a bit...
Yeah, I mean, Thousand Suns would probably go back now to doing the Warp Ritual in the middle, getting their 12 points. You can still make it undeniable, etc. Get it, but it's not the potential 15, and as you say, all those CP that you're losing out on now. It certainly hurt them. And Wrath of Magnus going means that they're not getting that. As soon as they played one cycle, they're like, oh, thank you for the free 15 points that I sit at the back of the board, not having to do anything.
That's fair.
So that's gone. I think for teams, I think like Liam said, after you get past those Marines, and I think Dark Angels are better than Iron Hands. I know people jumped on the Iron Hands straight away because it's obviously like Devastators in pods and stuff like that with all the free rerolls. They're great, but actually I think people forget Marines have lost AOC, so that Iron Hands list dropped down, hits really hard, and then falls over like
two Last Cannons, see a Gladiator lucky roll, and he's dead.
Like, yeah, exactly. Or 5 Devastators drop down, do a load of damage, and then die to a stiff breeze for a lot of people.
And I think like another issue with Iron Hands is they just lose to Harleys.
Yes, so, they can't do the damage to Harleys. And they have if they want to drop in close, then they're like, okay, you kill some boats, and then you get eaten by the infantry. And then, as you say, outside of that, I think there's some interesting options for teams within the terrain, particularly. I think with, like we were talking, Typhus, before, on light boards, like say the UK TC terrain is, Harleys have taken a significant nerf with the 4+ to the 5+ invuln. And if they have to play on a board where some matchups that they just went, I have to go into the middle and rely on my durability, that's taking a significant hit. And there's armies now that will go, well, actually, before I killed 2 or 3 boats and I couldn't deal with the rest of it in time, now the maths have swung that actually I do enough damage that you run out of momentum and now I can win the game. So I think that has certainly hurt them. But if you give Harleys table choice on a WTC terrain, they don't have to play that way. And then now their secondaries are still fantastic. Arguably, their secondaries are probably better in some ways behind enemy lines, got even stronger for them. And they can play that scoring OBSEC fast moving, jumping out of terrain, doing a lot of damage. AOC's gone, so they eat Marines.
They just cannot stat check you.
Yeah,
that's how they played some matchups before.
Yeah, they can't stat check you. They
Tau
play
or
almost like
Craftwords. That's how you play
PSC list.
And now you just cannot afford to do it, and that's the difference. But you still have all the junkiness that Hollies have to actually make sure that you can play.
Yeah, well, and then for some reason GW decided, oh, we'll give them the 5 of Invan, but we'll give them the stupid Death Jester back. So he's back in every list of how. Oh, and we'll give them the minus 6-inch range aura back as well, because that was not oppressive before. So it's been a bit of a weird one for Harleys. So I think
we had a conversation in our team. Like, dude, I was asking, what does that DJ do? Because I already forgot. And then he played one tournament with it, and he was like, "God fucking damn it!"
That combo is silly, and there was a reason they FAQ'd it. And you're like, so now you've removed the FAQ and just pointed him a little bit more. Okay, fine. He's gonna.
It's the same thing I was saying before, right? It's just that, like, so for Harleys, it's like, let's FAQ our FAQ and remove our FAQ, but give them new FAQs to change their rules. And it's just like, come on, guys, like, just like, at least when you make changes to an army, make it linear. You know what I mean? Don't be like, we're going to remove our old nerfs and we're going to give you your actual rules back. Like, it's like with
they clearly have no clue what makes Harleys good.
No, but it's the same as Custodes, right? The buff to Custodes is them undoing a nerf. It's not, they didn't get anything new. They just like, hey, you know that codex that we charged you 83 Aussie dollars for? You can now play with it. Like, it's like, it's just a bit weird.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And then, as we said, the opposite side, they went to Tyranids. How can we hit them in multiple ways? We'll do this, we'll do this, we'll do this. Oh, let's do that as well, just in case. And you're like, okay, fine.
Typhus, have I told you the story of Simon Gojcevic from Australia, the Team Oz player, his old Tyranid Codex? Have you heard this story?
Go for it. For it.
So this is not the current NID Codex, but the one before that. It was a really old codex, right? It was around for quite a few years, actually.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
And Simon is a prolific Tyranid player. The man has 3 of every single Tyranid unit, exceptions none. We're even talking like Hierodules and Harridans and everything. Man is a Tyranid. He is the Hive Fleet, right?
Yeah.
Anyway,
he's that type of player. Okay.
Yeah, it kind of blends in with the Australian wildlife, but in general, he's an exception. Now, because the codex was out for so long and it had so many FAQs, so many point changes, so many everything, over the course of several years, whenever an FAQ came out, Simon got his Tyranid Codex and he would write in the codex the actual rules. And like we're talking like with like a biro and like a pen and post-it notes and like a whiteboard marker. And Simon is a really by intent, transparent 40k player, and I have a lot of respect for him. But to people who knew him, this was an acceptable practice. To people who didn't know him, when he was at a tournament and they were like, oh, can you show me this rule? And he would open his codex and it'd be like just scribbled out, like writing his own rules and like rewriting profiles, and like the psychic powers were all FAQs. So he'd like cross out the power and like write the new power in the book. People would look at it and just be like, the man has a handwritten codex. Like, what is this? And more than once, I saw people like, he showed me it once and I laughed. I thought it was hilarious because I know he's not going to cheat, but like, this is just an example of how like over time codex has changed so much that Simon's codex was unrecognizable from its original form and was basically a handwritten post-it note in like a hardcover. It was very funny.
The NIDS got so many FAQs, didn't they? And then they got Crusher Stampede and they got all sorts. That book was a mess. And then they did the new codex, and then it's now a mess again because they've made so many changes.
You could do the same thing with the new
his current NID codex is going to look like that old one again now.
Yeah.
It's so bad.
Wow.
Yeah. Coming back to the topic. So we were talking about hobbies. I think when we go through that army, I think we can make a bigger argument for actually Craftwords nowadays, or actually a combination of both. I think boost to Linebreaker actually benefits Craftwords a lot.
Yep.
Because they suffered from not very good secondaries, and now slotting in this Harley's Patrol is actually quite good for them because they do not lose CP as well, which is also great.
That's big.
So, and DJ is also always good. So I think there's an argument for Craftwords as well. And whilst our community was always very hard on how these are strictly better and Craftsworks have nothing to go against. We are quite torn at this point. Like,
we've said something similar actually, because like you said, I think the seat that, yes, they've hit Hawks expensive. They haven't actually stopped what Hawks do, which is part of the problem. Like, they've hit them hard on points, but they still don't interact with you, which is not really. So it's just like, okay, so now I've got to pay more for the privilege. I can have 8 Hawks for the price of 10. That's basically how it works out. And they're still good. Maybe if you were taking 20 or 30, it's not the list anymore. But it's one of those that they still have that uninteractable annoyance. So they didn't really fix
very
Hawks.
fun diverse, right? Like, they're not particularly fun where you feel like you're hidden, and then
well, when you play a unit and then your opponent goes, well, I'm going to go here and then I'm going to move straight back. Do you mind if I just leave my unit here and don't have to move it? You know that the unit doesn't work the way it should work in a game. You're like, if you never have to move your models and we're just agreeing the 48-inch range or whatever it is, probably that unit needs a rules change. But I think. Oh, sorry.
When's this episode going to go live? Sorry, guys.
I will try to get this as soon as possible, like within next week.
Rad. So by the time this episode comes out, one of the Team Australia players who I've been playing with pretty recently, since he has perhaps returned from overseas, was playing Eldar.
Brody.
I can confirm that is true, and I'll be doing a post later on the Savo. So. About that, just wanted to check that this wasn't going to like predate my own post about my own team. That would suck. We were playing a game and he had like warp spiders with a once per game pretend they're a swooping hawk, and then 2 units of swooping hawks, and then like a fire and fade bike unit. And he had this term of like, 1,000 points of Eldar come out and then 1,000 points of Eldar go away. And I'm just like, I guess I'll take it. Like, what am I gonna do? Like, I don't have a choice, Like,
because they unnerved fire and fade, didn't they? So
So I was literally like, okay, cool, 1,000 points are out. I'm gonna kill 1,000 points, and then 1,000 points disappear behind a single WTC ruin, and I'm like, I guess I'll just move more scarabs at you. Like, that's generally my game plan. Like, oh boy,
yeah, I think it's fun and interactive, right?
Yes, yeah.
Emphasis on the interactive part.
But I think, like you say, Typhus, I think Eldar actually also the problem Eldar used to have in the last book was you had to take either a Vanguard or an Outrider because you wanted the slots. So you're instantly losing 3 CP, and Eldar needed to start with 2 CP to be able to Phantasm just the way they.
At least their warlord traits and relics are shit, so they didn't have to think about it.
Yeah. So, but now, you can put if you want to go down the Hail of Doom route, which there's an argument for, you can still do that. You can put the Mortal Wound pistol Farseer back in again, which does, and then you stack you can have a character that's running around doing 10 plus mortal wounds a turn. And there's lots of nice little options now for Eldar again. So I think it's going to be an interesting Eldar Harleys particularly on WTC tables. They've both still got arguments for play. As you say, maybe even mix now, because before you just couldn't afford the patrol because you're like, well, I need to start with 2 CP. I can't start with 1.
I think they are. I know we are diverging from talking about the team comp, and I love it. So what I was saying is, I think now this kind of army, like Craftworks plus Harlequins, are a really good defender army.
Yes, if they can pick a board, it's huge for them.
Yeah. Like they will not score high. I don't think this is an army that they can score high against specific army, but if somebody puts guard into you and guard with mortars, and your team doesn't have to play guard with mortars, you're like, cool, man, I'll buy the bullet. Somebody has to. And I think that's an army that when I was thinking, like, it seems good as a defender. It will obviously have worse pairings, like Chaos Knights, but no one in the world, I guess, plays Chaos Knights, so it's not as bad. So
the Chaos Knight players definitely feel hard done by. Like, can I use the Imperial Knight Codex and just have spikes on mine? Is that allowed? Because I think there's definitely that's what a lot of them are feeling like right now.
Funnily enough, we value Chaos Knights higher than Imperial Knights now.
Yeah, okay, interesting. I mean, to be fair, we used at the WTC last year, we used both, and we found they had good uses with.
It's meta call in our case.
Yes,
I feel like Typhus, I agree with you, but probably for teams, not for singles. Like
Yeah.
personally,
Yeah.
in a team's environment, I think Chaos Knights are actually more polarizing, because especially actually with guard being around, because even though guard shooting is super oppressive, a lot of the units are LD 6, 7, 8, and I actually think some of the tricks the Chaos Knights can do can potentially swing a matchup.
And they benefited a lot. All kinds of knights, I think Chaos Knights more, benefited a lot from free strategic reserves. Because that's something that you couldn't hide those 13 armigers. And
Footprint was too big.
Now you can deep strike one outflank from that specific outflank boon to from regular outflank, and you suddenly hide your whole army, and you're like, sure, I will lose 13-7.
But in a team's environment, I tell you what, like that's a huge benefit to the rest of the team. Whereas like I think Imperial Knights have just more raw stomp on your neck kind of power. That's probably more applicable to singles. But
Yeah, I think it's an army that has different usage. I think
Yes, yeah,
Chaos
agree.
Knights have better usage as an army that bullies small leadership, frail armies like Eldar, all kinds of Eldar, or
Yeah, agree.
we found it one of the few armies who is really good into Defender Orcs, or that's good into GSC,
Yes,
which
yeah, with the leadership issues. Yeah.
so those are like few things that we found that they have really good usage in like team comps. But when I'm talking about it, I think like 8-man team comps, not
Yep.
5-man.
No,
I
not
hear you.
really. It needs the
I
big
agree with
team,
you.
to split.
Yeah, and I
mean,
think
actually, you
they
mentioned GSC there, Typhus. I think GSC have some interesting options now as well. I know we haven't talked about them.
I find GSC to be like just at the top. When I had more talks with Patrick, so our Harlequin guy from WTC, he played some games with GSC, and he was like, "This army is just dumb. It has one bad matchup according to him from games he played, and that's Chaos Knights."
I mean, I
Which
think
is
especially again on WTC boards, it's got so many now. All the free upgrades they got, which I think some people haven't picked up on yet. I mean, I know
like the full power weapons on the bikes. Like
yes, yeah,
you go
yeah.
full on Mad Max with those boys. Like
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. People are like, oh, the bikes went up slightly. Yeah, but then they got all free upgrades. So I think GSC definitely have some options in singles. Will they be winning lots of events? I don't think so.
it's a very high skill cap army.
Yes,
I think
exactly.
it's
You make a silly
insane.
mistake with that list, you lose horribly generally.
Yeah.
But I think in teams, if you've got a good player on it, I mean, Liam, you guys had that last year, and GSC would. I think you caught people out with it, but you if you could engineer certain matchups for it, people just couldn't deal with it, could they? So
I mean, I think it's such an incredibly good teams army, because I say this unequivocally as someone who doesn't play GSC. I think GSC is perhaps if not tied for the highest skill ceiling army. In that, I think that it has a huge range of how badly it can do,
yeah,
and how well it can do, and how well it can do depending on the pilot. I think it's one of those armies where the pilot matters so much. Like other armies are I think Harleys are in a similar category, and there's a few armies in a similar category. But
I think sisters are kind
yeah,
of in this.
fully agree.
Yeah.
Some of the older Drakari armies, I'm not talking about Meat Mountain. I'm talking about the more like witch cult focused armies. Were all very like player centric, but GSC takes it to like an entirely new level where you can spend 45 minutes in your second battle round just in the movement phase, like positioning all the units and getting your exposed tokens and everything. And I play against GSC quite a lot, not just because I live nearby Eric, but there's a few Aussies, Alex Terrison and a few other people who play GSC to an extremely high level. And it's such a different game to play somebody who is so experienced playing GSC, because you sit there and you watch them pick you apart for one turn. They have like 1 or 2 turns max where they just get to play their game. You can't stop them. You can't really do anything about it. And if you survive, then you can play the game. And if not, you can re-rack and try again. And I think it's such an incredible army for teams, because especially at the WTC, you can really lean on, if your team has a couple of people who are, I think, exceptionally skilled at the game. And again, I would put Eric from the 2022 team in that
Eric's
category.
a great player.
I would definitely put him in that category. We can really lean on that and go, okay, you can now use every bit of that enormously rigid brain of yours.
not the
No, I agree.
Foundry.
I think GSC is as you say, probably the highest skill level list in the game right now. If you've got a player that is willing to put, not only is a good player, but I think even good players, they have to put in the hours of playing that army and
So
really
much.
understanding, okay, what
And
do I do? How do I
they
set it
got
up?
buff in their secondary, so they have like
Yes.
one nearly free 15-point secondary, which is
3 points per kill or something. I forget what it is. The
no, it's
killing
2
exposed
points.
unit.
2 points when you kill unit with exposed, one with marker, and one if that unit came from reserves.
Yeah,
Another 2 from reserves, and those, it doesn't need to be one unit like with Grey Knights secondary with teleporting. It just needs to. It can be done with 3 different units for 2 points. So
Crazy.
just free 15.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah.
So I think they, for me, they definitely can make a top 8 of 100%. If you start to get smaller teams, and again to terrain dependent, maybe they don't make a smaller team.
I think there is another advantage that some people might not think when talking about GSC, and that's that they have into most matchups nearly null deployment. So if you go second into a shooty army, which I think the meta can sometimes be like that, you just fully counter that because
yes,
you
it's one of
just
the few
hide.
lists that can still do that. Yeah.
Yep.
Agreed.
And
So-
because of the way blips work, it's even resilient to melee Alpha Strike armies because you can't come within a certain distance of the blips.
Yeah.
Which it's kind of got some good road blocking potential in an 8-man team event where, for argument's sake, if you're going to put up, I'm going to say something like, Blood Angels and Tau, it can actually shut down either of those armies just by playing completely differently. It's a very flexible army.
Yeah. As you say, you've got a good player playing them. For me, that army has so much options. You just have to have somebody that goes, okay, I'm going to go in, churn out. I need to play this game multiple times, re-rack it. Okay, no, that's not the right way to play this. I need to. Okay, that's wrong.
If you haven't played this matchup, you are fucked.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the other thing. The honest answer would be, it also, because you don't see GSC on singles that much, they might see a bit of
because it's high skill cap army, and it's I think one of the most expensive armies as well.
Oh yeah, well, it's horribly expensive. So it is one of those that I suspect there'll be a lot of, you go to a big team event, even something like the WTC where there's lots of good players. There'll be some players on that team that go, I don't know what that army does. How do I play against that? And if they
had that,
yeah, exactly. If they're having to be told before the round, this is what this army does, they've lost already. Pretty much, they've lost. It's not. It's not.
And it was particularly bad for Typhus because Eric's not good. He's just fast. So it's just, he's there's a running gag that people didn't understand how GSC worked. So nobody thought Eric was good. We just know that he's fast enough to play GSC in a time limit. So it became a bit of a running gag. He's not good. He's
he's just complete opposite of Manichima. You mean that he's playing fast and
we
has
are
no
not
issues
giving
with blocks?
GSC. There's no way. Even if he likes them, he's not getting GSC.
Well, that army requires skill. I don't think he can handle it.
He wouldn't finish a game with it, so that's not happening.
Oh, it's rough.
Finally, some banter. Anyway, have you guys actually thought about the most fun army after the changes that I was looking at, and I was petrified of how interesting and enjoyable it looks, and that is 55 Terminators in Dark Angels.
So
Dark Angels for sure. I think
but I mean 55 Terminators. I just want to hear your opinions.
I don't know if you'll go that far. It depends what secondaries you want to play then, because that cuts out Codex Warfare. Generally, you're relying on Cyclones to try and do the damage. But I certainly think I've seen a few people talking about like 40, still with 2 Talon Masters, still with some of the other options. You're like, now they're all OBSEC. Now you take the banner, and then you take, rather than taking Rights of War, you take the banners OBSEC, which doubles their OBSEC. So then they're like custodes and counting as 20 models on objectives and stuff like that. So there's definitely, Dark Angels are a bit silly right now. The Ravenwing build obviously works. The mixed build seems very popular at the moment. Say 2 units of Terminators and then speeders, attack bikes, and whatever mix you want. But I'm sure there's definitely on the Terminator side. It's the fact that the units are getting, what are they getting? 160 points of free upgrades each unit. You're getting
Fair.
Yeah, the Terminators with the Thunderhammer Stormshooters were used to be 10 points each. The Cyclones were 25 each, and then the Watcher in the Dark was 5 or 10. I can't remember. So you're getting 150 to 160 points of free upgrades. Take that 3 or 4 times, and you're like, okay, I'm really playing with 3,000 points now, not 2,000 points.
Yeah, I mean, I've versed that list a couple of times, and like, unpopular opinion, I think it's crap. I'm going to be honest. I think it's garbage. And here's, I guess, like how I explain it to some of the guys in like my local group. How many games like have both of you played against that Chaos Space Marine Terminator unit with neg 1 to wound, toughness 5, 4 up invo, or 5 up feel no pain? Sorry, and like how like that Terminator unit, it's pretty good, right? But you can kill it with most armies. Like if you actually invest resources and time and you play around it, I think that CSM Terminator unit is navigatable. Now imagine Now imagine someone's got 4 of those units, but instead of 6 plus D6 advance and charge, they move 5. And instead of shooting 40 bolt gun shots at AP 1 or 2 with full rerolls to hit, ignores cover, and rerolls to wound from Abaddon, they reroll hits maybe. And then, instead of full rerolls to hit and wound in combat, as well as the ability to fall back and charge, etc., imagine they hit you with a Thunderhammer that's AP2 for most of the game. So, like, I mean, they're slower. They hit better against some things, worse against other things. They shoot actually worse, despite the Cyclone missile launches. And the Invo save is not markedly different. And without Armor of Contempt, I'm not convinced the Storm Shield does very much for you, apart from having a 4-up Invo base. The 1-up is like, most things are AP3 anyway, right? The only thing that really sets them apart is the transhuman, which is what those Chaos Space Marine Terminators basically had when they were T5 and neg 1 to wound. Like, nothing wounded them on 3s, really. Like, it was pretty challenging to wound them on 3. It was strength 10 anyway. So, like, I kind of conceptualize those Dark Angel lists as a inferior Black Legion Terminator unit. But now there's lots of them, and they're slow, and they don't have a robust feel no pain. Like, I don't know. I'm not super convinced it's great. I went through 45 of those Terminators in a game with my 20 Custody Wardens.
I think Custodies have katas can actually make that manageable.
Oh, it's hilarious. It's very funny.
That 5-inch movement with 1-inch consolidation piling, that's surely fun.
Oh, the best part is when, you have like a Rhino tagging like all the Thunderhammers. So they got to waste all their Thunderhammers, and then they've got to do leadership checks to fall back or whatever because they're Deathwing. And I don't know. It's a really inflexible army. I understand that it's transhuman. I understand that it's durable. But it's like on light or dense tables, I think that it just suffers because on light tables, it's not mobile enough to go from cover to cover. And though it's durable, it's not immortal. And on dense tables, I think all the points that you're saving there, like all those points, are points that you would have probably spent on guns anyway. So if you're playing on dense tables, you kind of just feel like you're playing without a bit of an army anyway. It doesn't feel like you're playing 3,000 points. It feels like you're playing 1,500 points when you have no shooting whatsoever and you only move 5. I played Dark Angels twice at Uprising, and the Raven Wing army was scary as. Whereas my last round opponent had a mix of Raven Wing and Deathwing. He only had 25 of the Terminators, but I just walked away from them. That was my plan. Like, I went for a leisurely stroll, and they never got to combat.
That's not Karen name, yeah.
No.
I think for singles, I think it's too skewed. But I can see like. And it's a design choice. It's a little bit like Typhus. You guys went for last year at the WC. You went
36 warriors.
Yeah, you went for the warrior spam nids, didn't you? Which is the similar. It's one of those. Some armies can't deal with it. It will board control the board, and it has play in teams. There is the interesting thing with Marines is there's I think multiple viable builds now. You've got to pick what your role is within the team. Yeah. For sure.
And I think we all agree it's usually Dark Angels.
Yeah, I think so. Like I said, the Iron Hands have got some interesting play in them. And some of the other Marine builds have some great options. They just don't have the secondaries.
They don't have Codex Warfare.
Yeah, the Codex Warfare is the wrong way around. The way you fix Codex Warfare, it should be 1 point dev, 1 point tac, 2 points assault, and then that's a good secondary.
Max of 5 per. Honestly, I still think it should probably be max of 5, like
and
per
2
doctrine.
per, and for example 2 per kill. That can also be fine.
Yeah, it's just the fact that they let you stay in dev, and that secondary, you just can't think they thought those two together in that. So that might get FAQ'd. You never know.
No, it's a great design choice. I don't know what you mean.
Yeah. But that's what we said. I think there is some interesting other Marines. If you look at the build potential, they just can't hit the secondaries. Like we were talking about it, you can do some cool things with White Scars now. Things like you were talking about the mobility of the Terminator unit. Well, with White Scars, when you've got advance and charge, you've got the plume, you take the Psycho, which gives you +2 to charge, +2 to advance. You can start, that Terminator unit is now moving like 8 plus D6 plus a 2D6 plus 3 charge. Then you can start getting some distance on that Terminator unit, which you've put full rerolls to hit on. Plus, there is cool options in there, but they can't play the Codex Warfare anywhere near like Dark Angels can or Iron Hands. You go, okay, well, what are my secondaries now? Engage is not going to be good, but behind enemy lines is good.
Tactics.
Yeah, shock tactics maybe. Shock tactics is a little bit of a risky one depending on who you're playing, because sometimes you'll never get it first turn if you have to go first and your opponent hasn't engaged yet, so you're capped at 12. There's a few places where it's good, but it's one of those secondaries that if your opponent can deny it, there's always risk in any of those type of secondaries. Whereas if you can just, for something like Codex Warfare, how your opponent, unless you build a list like Liam's list, which what do you kill to get your Codex Warfare points? I mean, I suspect the single Alaris, they were probably hidden. So they were like, yeah, we're not leaving this ruin. You're not getting 2 points for killing me. So
I had to have a bit of a giggle at Uprising, because I was determined. I was hand on heart determined that Might of Terror secondary for Custodes, which is like, I've got to kill some of your units, but if any Custody units die, I get 0. I was determined that was a good secondary, and for the entirety of day 1, I took it in all 3 games, and all 3 of my opponents were like, I'm just going to go hunting those single Alaris. And yeah, it worked for them. I got like 4 and 0 for that secondary, respectively.
That secondary
it's not good.
It's a nice idea until you actually go, oh, okay. It means
until you
I
put it
can't
in practice.
Anything small, yeah.
Because Brian Lakeland, who's one of my very good friends. Sorry, he was one of my groomsmen at my wedding. He and I played Custodes, and like the entire plane ride down, I was like, man, you got to think about Might of Terror. It's a good secondary. He's like, Liam, it's not a good secondary. And he was right. So like from day 2,
after day 1, you were like, okay,
after day 1, I was like, because I've got a little whiteboard that I score on, and like day 2 onwards, I'm like, Might of Terror, like cross out, like never again, never taking that secondary again.
Yeah, you better to just take grind.
Yeah, honestly, I really wanted it to be good because it's 4 points. It's not a good secondary.
Yeah, exactly.
And like thinking about other armies, I think you were a great example of Necrons being good. You think killing the pre-game movement actually killed them? Because I don't think any of you mentioned Necrons, and I think they are still quite good in the team format. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, Typhus, I interrupted you.
What I wanted to say, like the biggest change is actually lack of pre-game movement, which meant that with how big of a footprint your units usually have, you could hide behind ruins that were outside of your deployment zone, or you could play a game that you could actually put a unit in a way that it could either advance further forward, like with destroyers or Scorpex, or move behind the ruin because you left enough space. And now you do not have that, which combined with their insane footprint, I think that army has the highest footprint in the whole game.
Yes, yeah.
It's the main issue, but I'm curious, what are your thoughts?
I'm still very pro Necron, and I think that the army just has to change and adapt. I mean, the reality is
Nightside's boys.
Nightside's boys, but also there were some Necron builds that I was actually toying around with pre WTC that were probably just edged out because of the pre-game move. And I don't think they're better or worse. I think they just do different things. So everyone was taking OBSEC Scout because it was the default dynasty. It was just amazing. But let's be realistic. But now that Scout, you can't do both, you might as well be taking Nihilak, which is the default dynasty that gives you OBSEC. And I think that people underestimate just how good Nihilak actually can be. Because, the army trait is OBSEC and you ignore AP1 in your deployment zone, which is meh. But the reason why Nihilak is so good is their special protocol is Protocol of the Eternal Guardian. And the reason why that's actually pants on head silly is that Eternal Guardian is light cover if you don't move, army-wide, everything, vehicles, monsters, whatever, and then set to defend or steady the Overwatch on 5s and +1 to hit in melee if you get charged. And because that's their super protocol, if you pick that for the whole game now with the balanced data slate, if you're going second, what your army gets is +1 armor save and shooting for the entire game. And when you get charged, Overwatch on 5s and +1 to hit in melee for the first round of combat, which is a pretty exceptional army-wide buff to build around. And so, I was actually playing around with lists with 27 Locust Destroyers around the King, like 3 of those 7-man units, because when they're 2-up save out in the open and Overwatch on 5s with full rerolls from the Silent King, they become way harder to interact with than if they were actually OBSEC and Scout. They don't need the Scout as shooting units as much. And you can put most of that army in a Night Scythe. On WTC tables, you can hide the Night Scythe behind a Ruin. I know they have to go in reserve now, but previously that's what I was thinking
I don't think
about.
it's actually that bad for them.
Not at all. Free strat reserves and the Night Scythe trick is exceptional because it means that you don't have to spend any CP and you can just play clown cars with your Night Scythes.
And it hides behind L usually, so you're completely fine.
Yeah, 100%. And you can always use Prismatic Dimension Breach to deploy the Night Scythe behind a wall and then plonk out 7 destroyers. I think Necrons are actually in a good spot. Where Necrons, I think, are going to struggle at the moment is going to be the psychology shift. So, like the list that I played at WTC, the way it worked was that it got points so fast, so early, that even if I was tabled, which happened more than once, I would be at like 99 to 100 points by turn 3. But now that secondaries like Purge the Vermin can't be scored turn 1, now that Code of Combat is gone.
The biggest change you might not have noticed with Purge the Vermin, it doesn't mention Holy Within. So if there is one motherfucker who's standing on the center of the board, and that's, I don't know, a big knight, you cannot get any.
I actually did not notice that at all, Typhus. So thanks for that one. Here I go getting my PDF out on my phone. But no, I think that definitely matters. Unpopular opinion, I thought Code of Combat was actually Necron's best secondary.
I know you ran it when we played, Liam, and I thought it's a great secondary. And loads of the other Necron players never took it. And I was like, why are you not taking this secondary? It's
I
so
took it
good.
8 for 8 games. Sorry, that's a lie. The only game I didn't take it was when I was playing Imperial Knights, and I might as well Bring It Down anyway. But I literally took it invariably in my games because when you've got the Barge and the King, it's just like, oh, cool, 9 points a turn. It was actually just silly season. And I'm really sad that secondary is gone. I was a bit like, oh, maybe I won't take it because the King's no longer core, and so it doesn't get rerolls. Oh, boo-hoo. But then they took the secondary away full stop, and I was like, damn it. Like, you bastards.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I mean, the other interesting one, and it needs some testing, I think the other interesting thing with Necrons that could open up is now that the way of Arks of Omens works and the points decreases, I have seen people even talking about like the vaults, the monoliths. You're like, actually, there's some potential there now. Whereas before, you're like, I just can't fit it in. It's too expensive. Doesn't really work with the army I want to use.
I had one long day at work one day, and I got back, went onto our national team Discord, and what I saw was our Necron player playing, and I saw his monolith in close combat in opponent's deployment zone. And I was like, what the fuck am I watching? What happened?
It's actually they have some potential viability now, whereas before I can't remember seeing an actual monolith on the table with the new
4th edition.
Probably that was the last time I remember it.
The other thing that I think a lot of people I haven't, I guess, caught on to is I think with Guard being what it is, and even like Hawks and stuff being what they are, the Hexmark Destroyer is stonks. Like stonks in
really
Hexmark Destroyers are up because you have to trawl through a number of FAQs and like sort of creative use of the English comma to understand how it works. But you can Hunters in Etheric Interception is the name of the strat. You can do that to the Kaskin unit with the Barbican's Key. And so one of the lists, I nearly took this to Uprising, but we didn't have the FAQ out yet for the King. So I really didn't want to take a list to Uprising and then find out later that the Silent King was illegal. That would have just been controversy I did not need. So, but it was, I was literally going to take the King.
You could have took Sharekan, or however you pronounce it.
I could have played Zerikan for my entire army. That would have been really meta. So I was going to literally play like the King, a Technomancer, 2 Hexmark Destroyers, 3 Annihilation Barges, 27 Destroyers, and 2 Nightsides. Because it was a shooting meta, and like the entire army has like no footprint whatsoever. It's like 360 mils and the Silent King, so I could just hide. And because it was Mephrit, man, Necrons can shoot. People like honestly,
they can, yeah.
Because if you Mephrit, their special protocol is ignores cover in half range, and 6s are an extra AP, and it's good ignores cover. It's not just ignore the benefits of lights cover. So when your whole army just ignores like light and dense and everything, it's pretty funny. You feel like you're playing a tower army.
That's
I think Necrons actually got kind of better with whole changes of the meta. Ironically, I think they are still in a good spot in teams. I think they had few matchups that were rough for them, and I think they got a little like obviously Knights are worse for you now. I think they got way worse, and that's the main thing. But I think they got a quite solid spot in a team. That's
I think so. In a team event, and as I said, I think now is actually like before. It was always going to be OBSEC pre-game move, and certain units just fill that role.
Will anyone take something else than Nihilak though? I don't think so. We'll have another default one.
Told me to come in here.
No, I don't think so. I think that'll be the default. But what I mean is, sorry, you might see now some interesting builds with other units that you wouldn't have seen before, just because now the way the Omens detachment works, you've got much more flexibility for the Crons than they had before, I think.
Typhus, I have been zooming in on this slightly blurry, perhaps Russian PDF that I got of the Necron secondaries, and you are right. It literally just says within now, which would have been very good for me to know, to tell Matt Morozoli, who lost to a Necron player called Igor, that the Lord of Change could have literally sat in the middle of the board and denied 4 points.
Denied him all.
So I hope he listens to this.
So you just want to say that you failed your friend?
It's always funny when I don't know the Necron secondaries. That's always pretty worrying. It's like literally the faction that I like the most, and I don't even know what the secondaries are.
It's fine. Like you cannot know everything, especially when you're a captain. Like
here I go now, reading every secondary and looking for where the commas are. I'm just gonna go.
That's why I joked it, like because I had Nottingham GT before. I was like, I'm not even going to try and look at the secondaries because they'll have tweaked some of them slightly, and then I'll start playing that way in the game, and then I'll be like, oh wait, that's the new rules, not the old rules. So
I want to hear the problems that will surface at LVO with people just fucking around with those top players. Like, no, that's not how it works.
Oh, I'm sure there'll be somebody that'll play a game and they'll be like, "Oh, but I get 3 points for this now." You're like, "No, that's the old rules. You only get 2 for behind enemy lines."
It's going to be an absolute bastard to keep track of, like, to be honest, because especially when you spend so much time thinking about a new rule set, heck, even the points changes, it's going to be hard to check lists because battle scribes updated. For example, like
Wahapedia as well, so you're fucked.
So if you've accidentally updated your battle scribe and that's how you use to check if points are correct, you are up struggle street.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can't. I mean, and if you've, as you say, if you've been spending so much time thinking about the new meta, thinking about the new list, and you're still trying to play the old version, that's going to be messy. So I know a number of my guys on my team have like even in our team chat, they're like, no, we're not looking at this chat until next week. I'll reply to you then. But at the moment, I'm sticking to my
100%. I think it's going to be a bit chaotic. I'm not sure if you guys saw, but for the Uprising Facebook event, they actually did like a democratic vote. Like, do you guys want to play the new rules or do you guys want to play the old rules? And the vote was overwhelmingly like, let's play new rules. But certain disgruntled parties decided. Sorry. Certain disgruntled parties decided. It's not even my phone. I'm so sorry. Certain disgruntled parties decided that if you go on certain websites, you can pay for Facebook troll like bots to like vote in a certain way. So if you go to the Uprising Facebook page, you'll notice that around about 200 people voted yes, new rules. And around about 1,000 people voted no, including people like RJ Singh and Gupta and Mickey Mouse. and so,
wow.
So democracy in action. I think Gupta
and some Liam Alexander.
Yeah, some troll voted no. I do think that my time in this room is rather limited. Just FYI.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, cool. We can try. So I'll go through a few armies that I also thought that got good. I think Orcs got even better. And I think they have some good matchups. At least that's what we found out in our training weekend. That like the Goth build actually slaps. And when I say slaps, I saw matches where 10 commandos with that weird grot that says "You're in cover now, bitch."
The distraction grot.
Just suddenly kill 7.
2 minutes. I'm so sorry.
No, that's all right. But yeah, no, I think I agree with you, Typhus. I mean, we even looked at Orcs for when they updated for the last WTC, and you're like, the secondaries got much better, the points decreases. You're like, there's potential there. We just didn't.
I think nobody figured them out then.
Well, yeah, we had one guy. He wasn't on the team, but he was within our playtesting group, and he was like, I think you could take Orcs, and he's an Orc. He's a little bit like Liam said with their NID player. He's just
with Simon,
he's just Tom on our group. He's got 10, 20,000 points of Orcs. He's got everything. He's got everything you can think of. And he was like, no, legitimately, guys, these are good. You just need to really understand what you want to do with them. And we were like, we had like 2 weeks notice to decide a list, and we just like can't quite make it fit.
Not a single team figured them out. So
no. But I do think they had we were close to taking them. We were like, we just did, because Tom wasn't actually playing that year, he couldn't attend. It was like, do we try and get another player to understand the list like he does? It's very hard. So in the end, we didn't take them. But I think now, like you say, they've actually got even better. Again, are they going to be winning singles? Probably not.
No.
But in a team matchup, some of their secondaries are great. The scoring options.
It can be very uninteractive army.
Yes, that's the thing. A number of their secondaries, they're not relying on you doing something. They're like, okay, I'm just going to score these. And as you say, the Goths build can do. Some armies will underestimate,
especially with knobs. Now knobs have big choppas for free.
Yes,
and when you count like that big knob squad, it kills Belacor in one go with all the buffs, and you're like, what?
Yeah. That's huge, yeah. So I think that's the interesting thing. I think for singles, it's going to start. I think Marines are going to not necessarily dominate, but there'll be a lot of Marines because people have Marines, and there's a few Marine builds. Even if you don't want to play Dark Angels or Iron Hands, the other Marine builds still did get buffs, not into the same degree, but you will certainly see more Marines across the tables in any event you go to. I think I agree with Liam. I think Knights are very good. Again, in singles, I'm not sure I think they still have problems with things like Votan can just blow them off the table.
Votan is bad.
Yeah, I mean, I know. I mean, the beam weapons are just ridiculous against Knights. It's just silly. I mean, I've seen Matt used his Votan against a Knights player. I know it was pre
Guard and Dark Angels can be roll-offy, or
yes, it was depending on the Dark Angels build. If you're running, like you say, if you're running 9 multi-melter attack bikes, 3 tornadoes with more multi-melters. If you're running like 12, 15 plus multi-melters, that's a lot of multi-melters to
or even the Terminator built into that. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Knights
Knights like, the transhuman's such a big thing for them, just reduces their damage output massively. So I think Knights from a team event will do well. Again, singles, I think they'll do well until they hit certain matchups.
I think in singles we'll see more of them as an addition. For example, Grey Knights with 3 Helverins. Sisters will bring 3 Helverins as they are free now. And
we've already.
I think main army that will actually benefit from this, I think, is Admech. That would be my guess.
Yeah,
that army.
We thought it was Admech or maybe Sisters.
Yeah. Well,
so GK could do it as well, for sure.
Liam is back, or maybe he isn't. Like, all the episodes with him are kind of funny in that sense. Oh, maybe he is, or maybe he's not. Oh, yeah. So he's partly there. Connection issues. Yeah. We're very technical people, clearly. Maybe it will work. We'll see. But when I think about the meta, what were your top 8, Josh, when you were actually thinking about it? What was your top 8 if you were to choose 8 armies?
For us, I think it was I was thinking Marines. I think Custodes are there. I think Guard.
I'm back.
FAQ dependent.
Yay!
There we go. We're back. I think Necrons still make it. Knights. That's 5. And then after that, it was
GSC probably.
GSC can probably make it. Harleys or Eldar have a good chance of making it. I need to see more of Tau particularly on WTC boards. Like if you're talking about UKTC boards, I think Tau is still fine because they've got lost the Flyers, but AOC gone. Harleys being their worst matchup, going to a 5-up Invun has really helped Tau. So I think Tau still have play. Maybe on WTC boards, if without the Flyers, do they struggle to dig people out? Is the question. That's the one I'm interested to see,
and especially with limited amount of cold stars.
Yes, you can't take as many cold stars. You can't take you can take the Flyers, but I suspect we won't see many Flyers. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Tau players will go, I still need them, but generally they've been wanting them for the alpha, and that getting around those ruins they possibly can struggle with. So I think that's the only. I want to see Tau on WC boards more before I make I know for sure.
Yeah, we are also not sure about them after our test games. Like, we are not convinced they are within top 8, but maybe we haven't found the build yet. We are obviously toying with triple Devilfish Breacher build.
Yeah, the Breachers.
To actually have something with reach in that army. So,
and can just outnumber people on objectives, right? Being able to move them so far, and
it's another army that when you talked about Necrons, people will need a mentality shift with how they play it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you look at what Tau was under the last Nephilim, it was almost always probably 2 Riptides, a load of commanders, 2 planes, a big crisis block, maybe some small crisis blocks, and it was just the alpha they could do on a number of armies was horrific for some armies. They're just like, if that Tau army shoots at me, I've probably lost. I mean, I remember say Nassim at Leicester GT. I don't think any of his games, other than when he got to the final, lasted more than about 20 minutes because it was just that type of game. And you're like, okay.
But it's also UKTC.
Which makes a difference. UKTC terrain massively suits Tau because all the L's in the middle
outer lips of the L's
have windows, and you just touch the lip, and then the crises are like, I can see through this now. My 18-inch moving crisis blob just sees the whole board. So that's part of the reason why he did that. But the Flyers really helped him. He could get right at shoot everything he wanted to. Losing that is where the Tau, I think, as you say, will have to have a bit of a mentality shift. If they just try and stick to all the guns on Crisis, which have gone up in points, and a few other bits and pieces, it's not the same list, but you can take some of that, still take some great firepower and some mobility back with the breaches and things. I still think they've got play. I just haven't played it enough or seen it enough on WTC board yet to go, do they definitely make my 8? Or are they... I mean, I'm sure you guys are the same. Whenever, what you normally get to is you get like 4, 5, maybe 6 that you're like, yeah, these are set. And then it's always the last few you're like, okay, what fits the team?
Always.
Yeah. Should we take GS before? It might have been, should you have taken Blood Angels? Should you take GSC? Do we take Chaos Knights and Knights? Is that too much? Is that too skewed as a team having 2 Knight builds? Or do we take no Knights because we don't want that skew? There's always, that's the fine tuning. There's not necessarily a right answer. It's just what suits your team and what your planned pairing system is.
I think the thing for Tau that's a bit weird for me at the moment is that my perspective is probably like falsely positive, maybe, because like I've been preparing for Uprising. Obviously, it's like my biggest singles event of the season, with the exception perhaps of WTC, the singles. And for me, the Uprising tables are probably more akin to the tables in London, in the sense that there is a big lip. All of the terrain have windows. Heck, some of the some of the ruins have bases across the entire bottom of them as well. So they're impossible to stand in without being shot from all directions. So the terrain at the Uprising event was, I've seen some Reddit threads where people are like, the tables are really dense. And I'm like, not really. Like, I would say
from the pictures, they looked dense.
They look dense, but they're probably more akin to the light WTC tables, where you also have a lip around the outside. Every ruin has a lip, and every ruin, bar like 1 or 2 on each table, have loads and loads of windows, so they can all just be tagged and shot through. So it was actually extraordinarily hard to hide models on that Uprising table. I think that's why Tau did as well as it did, because it's fly, it's mobile, and it can just tag the outside of ruins, just like you described, Josh.
Yeah, that's huge for Tau. Whereas,
maybe I'm a little bit too positive.
Yeah, I think that's why I think Tau have some great potential just on the level of WTC boards. I think they're still forced. If you want to take Tau, they might still be forced into that early put forward role so they can pick a.
And there's another thing right now that I think Tau compete with, and that's their role, which is like score high by killing opponent in shooting. There's more armies that are good in that.
Yeah.
So it's something about can you manage more shooty armies in your team without making it kind of roll-offy in your team composition?
Exactly. Yeah. If you're planning to have your Votan do a similar role, can you afford to have both of them in your team both competing for a lighter table?
And guard and Space Marines. And say you take Craft Wards, and suddenly you have a lot of shooty armies, and it might not just be feasible.
Might be way too monochromatic.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and then you just got to find that balance between the team. But I think I do agree with Liam. I think right now it looks like Imperium have made a big comeback on the who's making teams. They definitely feel like they've got some great options in there. I think. Then the Chaos have lost for sure. Like the CSM book is struggling, I think, a little bit, like losing AOC and not really getting anything out of it is hard for them. Like the Abaddon going up, the Terminators going up, lost AOC on everything, and then they got a few things like Legionnaires, got a lot of free equipment, but Legionnaires were not really what you were. It's not like you're going to go, oh, I'm now going to take 6 to 9 units of Legionnaires, and that's going to be an amazing list. It's not. It hasn't really gone that route. I think there could still be some builds in there. I think if you are potentially like, I know Vladdy was running the Word Bearers with the big possessed blocks, Cursed Earth. I think there's potential with the Cursed Earth.
Decimators.
Yeah, and the Decimators, again, in Cursed Earth. I think you have to rely on that 4++ now with the CSM rather than your AOC's gone. So I think there's still potential there. Do they make an 8 at the moment? I don't know. Need to see them more actually on table and playing. I said Demons.
I think
if they give them something with a Warp Storm, that could really help, because I think they actually.
Mono Zinj Demons have some play because they are tough to shift for really shooty armies. Like I
Yes,
can
yeah.
see
It's
that
just
as a role
unfortunate
in the
it sort
team.
of forces you to go monos each because you like there's a lot of nice options now. They put flesh hounds down. Flesh hounds are viable, I'd say now, with the point decreases. There's a few other units that they went, oh, that's really nice. But now you're like, but if I combine it all, I lose all the Warp Storm cool abilities. And it just really hurts.
You have to roll super well even to do anything with the Warp Storm,
Yes.
really. It's just not something you can build an army around anymore. And the other thing that's weird about CSM, just because even though it's a Chaos faction, it like they're Space Marines, right? Like the vast majority of the units have Space Marine-esque profiles because Iron Hands and Dark Angels are so prevalent, the tools people are taking to kill Devastators kill Legionnaires. And you know, if you're ready to fight Dark Angel Terminators, you're ready to fight a possessed.
Yes, exactly.
You know, like it's this unfortunate flow-on effect that because Space Marines got buffed so much, even though CSM have already been hit, the game is shifting towards things that kill them anyway. So CSM are actually in a pretty bad spot, to be honest. I think
that's how I see this as well.
Yes, yeah. That's what we said. It's like, oh, the Marine, they took AOC away, and then they gave Marines a load of free stuff to almost make up for it. So Marines' damage went through the roof. So they're like, okay, now we can compete another way. Whereas Chaos were like, oh, we didn't get any of that.
You know, Space Marines got free Inferno pistols, and Chaos Space Marines got free, I don't know, corn axes. I know which one I'd prefer.
Yes, exactly.
Like, you know, like if you give one army free guns and you give another army free melee weapons, I know what's going to work out better.
Yeah, as you say, especially people who now design their army to kill those Marines before they make it across the table. And that's unfortunately the other question. Like, it was going to be interesting to see. We haven't seen the Codex yet, so I might be completely wrong. But it was interesting to see what World Eaters were going to look like. But if they've lost AOC and they're a combat-dominated army that is Marines, that could be interesting. Could be difficult for that. They might have already shot themselves in the foot before they've even released the Codex. That's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, I was kind of holding out hope, for example, that like Armor of Contempt would become a rule written in the codexes, because I don't know, I kind of liked it overall. I think it made Marines feel a bit more like Space Marines, but the longer you play with it, I think for me anyway, I'm glad that it's gone overall, because it made some armies feel weird. Like why does a Sister of Battle have a better armor save than a Custodian? Like, what's going on there? It always felt like a little bit weird that, you know, Celestine was harder to kill than, you know, Trajan Valoris.
Yes,
it was
exactly.
it was always a little bit weird for me anyway. Like, the fact that AP1 basically left the meta in its entirety because it became borderline irrelevant. It's just weird for me that like Votann are the army that keep it. You know what I mean? Like, it's so weird that the rule that was originally intended for Space Marines, the only army that's maintained it is Votann.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I just think it's weird.
It is a bit weird. And then, well, they got a special one. They got the AOC and no rerolls to wounds.
Void armor.
Like, oh yeah, our void armor is so good. So yeah, I'm surprised, but I can see why they did it, because I think a lot of people, you could tell with more casual players, or they would hate. Like, okay, so what save are you on now? Because it's that having to do that mental arithmetic every time. Oh, so you're on a 3-up save. I've done this. Oh, but you're in cover, and you've got AOC. You could see it. I remember every time I played somebody with CSM, or when I used them, and somebody was like, if they had to keep working it out in their head each time, you're like, okay, I can see why people don't like AOC as a mechanic. And as you said, it's flawed in that AP1 weapons became irrelevant, whereas AP3 or 4 weapons are like, okay, it hurts us, but it's not that bad. It's statistically, it doesn't grade very well. It's the same issue that -1 damage has. -1 damage kills 2 damage weapons so hard, whereas if you're a D3 plus 3 damage, you're now D3 plus 2. You're like, no, it's not that bad. It's
AOC -1 damage and like deny rerolls or all kinds of those rules basically invalidate damage output of specific armies or builds.
Yes, exactly.
And that's a design that I know why it needs to be done, but I'm not a great fan of.
Yeah, but GW often they get into that arms race with rules, and they've done it multiple times. They create a unit that, okay, that's too reliable, 2 does this. Okay, so we'll put out a unit that turns off a load of these rerolls. But then I've invested a lot of points in that unit that does that. It was the same when we had the stupid we'll make 2-up rerollable saves, and then we'll have invisible Death Stars. Also, we'll invent D, which if you roll a 6 on a template, it just auto removes units. Okay, well, that's not a rule that should work that way, but they cornered themselves into that corner. Go, well, we've created.
How else do you kill a Thunderbrick?
Yeah,
you know, like
I've made a unit that's unkillable. Okay, I've got to put some way in the game of killing it. But then that interaction was you played somebody else who wasn't running that stupid list, and you're like, oh, I've put a template down on your 300-point model. I've rolled a 6, so it's dead. Take it off. It was.
And I mean, I was making this point the other day that it's pretty funny, right? So you've got like, you know, the edition comes out and armor saves and invo saves. Yeah, fair enough. Okay, well, now we're going to bring in feel no pains and neg1 damage. Yeah, okay. So now we're going to bring in abilities that ignore neg1 damage and feel no pain. All right, fair enough. So invo saves are no longer durable because of the railgun. So let's bring in the demon save. Yeah, no worries. Now let's FAQ Drago so that he ignores demon saves. Like it just keeps going, right? You know, it's like, oh, I'm neg1 damage, no rerolls, feel no pain. It's like I'm a guardsman with a flag.
Yes, yeah.
Like, I guess I ignore dreadnoughts. Like what? Like why is this dude with a flag ignoring like Duty Eternal? Like what?
Yeah, exactly. It makes no sense.
Yeah, obviously, you know, suspend belief. We play a game system where the rules are, you know, are open to interpretation and stuff. But like, you know, you wonder then if, you know, new Space Marine Codex comes out and it's like, dreadnoughts ignore wound abilities. You're like, okay, yes, nice. Like,
it's a race, isn't it? They just stack rules on top of each other, and you're like, oh, okay, what a mess.
So I will try to navigate to closing this one, guys. So I have few questions from the chat. I know like Liam had to change spots and he's constantly muting himself. So, you know, there is like slight signs that you might need to
I've been doing that the whole time.
But yeah, if you were to choose like 3 armies, what armies do you see as most problematic when you build your team that you need to account for and create counters? Obviously, guard. Let's take that one out of the way. But
yeah, I mean, exactly like you said, if you don't have the tools to deal with guard, they will just walk over you right now.
But like other 2 armies that you think you need to make sure that you can play against as a team, like WTC, it was sisters. You knew everybody would bring sisters, everybody would bring Nids, and some kind of elves. Now, what are the armies that you think will be that problem that you need to solve?
So, I mean, I think from my side, what you also have to try and work out is which armies. It's hard to counter a prey army, if that makes sense. In that, if they're never going to use it in that way, then it's trying to engineer a matchup. So, like, it is hard. It's actually got to try and think about what do we expect people to be putting forward, and then do we have not just one counter? You want to have 2 counters because otherwise it's a useless exercise. So, I mean, at the moment, there will be some people, like you say, if people go down the more defensive route with Marines and do go that Terminator heavy list or do go that route, having solutions to that, having solutions to still, it's going to be something like Tau or Votan on the table choice. How do you deal with that? If you don't have a solution, then they're just going to rack up big points because they'll be like, well, I forget to pick table and I blow you off the board. Thanks for that game. Or the other flip side is, again, can you deal, like we discussed, Harleys, if they now can't rely on the 4-up, so if they go forward and are on a heavy board, how do you deal with something like that? Or GSC, table choice. So for me, I don't know the meta yet, so it's hard to pick, say, 3, but I think that's more the question. What do you think the forwards are going to be? How do you deal with them? I think for sure, there's 2 types of forwards. Either armies that want light boards, generally a gunline-ish of some description. Do you have an answer to what becomes the most common gun line and an early put forward? Last year, for example, for most teams, that was Tau. Some teams didn't use Tau in that way, but a lot of teams did. They went, here's our Tau list. It's going to pick one of the lighter tables. You've got to have 2 answers to it. Otherwise, it's going to score big points. Or is it the other side where people are putting forward things like Sisters, which was last year, and then they're picking a heavier board and going, I'm going to score great on my secondaries. I have this 24-inch death zone that you don't want to come into, and unless you can deal with me, I'm going to rack up a load of points. Necrons could do a similar role potentially as well. So it's just working out what those are. I don't know the answer to that yet, which is hard to give you 3, but I do think you're going to have answers to gun lines that go forward on a light board, whatever they are, Votan, Tau, maybe Marines, maybe a few others. And then you're also going to have answers to those armies that don't want to engage with you and play on a board where they're just going to hide all game. Can you dig them out? Or have you got options of those? So not probably quite the answer you wanted, Typhus, but I think that's, for me, that's where it is.
And Liam?
Yeah, look, I reckon similar to what Josh said, but more specifically, I actually do think Custodes are here to stay. I think that the Custodes infantry armies with the ability to be transhuman and turn off hits and wounds rerolls essentially for the entire game, especially if you build an army that can do grind them down or behind enemy lines and you have the CP regen and so on and so forth, and you budget well. I think that a lot of armies in the game as it is now rely on rerolls to hit and wound, especially in melee, to clear things out, in a marine meta as well. So I think that teams that aren't prepared, for argument's sake, to fight even 5 Storm Shield dudes hiding in a ruin with transhuman and turn off reroll hits and wounds, I think are in for a world of hurt, because the reality is that's 10 obsec models and it's going to be hard to outnumber them, and maybe they can heroic. And at the end of the day, most custody armies don't bleed secondaries either. So in a team's environment, ironically, I see shield custodies being very good for a shield army, in the sense that it doesn't bleed secondaries, it can hold primary well, it can score points without killing you, and it's got the defensive strats to actually stay around even against armies like Tau and Votan and whatnot. Terrain dependent, obviously.
Yeah.
So I think like Custodes and their probably Dark Angel silly second cousins are probably the 2 kind of archetypes for durable melee that you need to be able to deal with for a team. If you can't pin those armies, they'll just go into like an oppressive shooting army and get like a 12-8 either way, which is not what you really want from one of your big hitting armies. And then the other armies, like Josh said, I think are the oppressive Alpha Strike armies. Sure, the Tau lost a bit of their oppressiveness with the planes having to start on reserve and them being 50 billion points, but Iron Hand drop pod armies, Dark Angel biker armies, my god, they move like 45 inches before the game begins or something silly. If you're not ready for 10 Black Knights to be on your deployment edge, shooting your entire army and then charging you, you might lose the game before you even have a turn. And there are some armies that, regardless of skill, I don't think can deal with that. But equally, from like an 8-man team, you probably do need to have multiple lists that have maybe some infiltrators in them or something that can just stop those scout moves, so that the oppressive scout move, advance, charge just isn't as crazy as it is.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, makes sense. And what's like an army or a list that you are most excited to test now? You can start, Liam, now. Previously, it was Josh.
Well, I have this cool Custody Warden list that apparently does well. In all seriousness, I spent a fair bit of time on that army, and I have an event next Saturday that I've just subbed the same list for because I don't have time to work out a completely different army. After that, I'm really not sure. That's kind of where my hypothesizing ended on the Australia Day long weekend, and that's where I'm leaving it.
And you, Josh?
So, I mean, for me, I think everybody wants to test Marines right now. So maybe I want to play a bit of them because I think like a lot of people, I have a huge Marine army that's been sitting on the shelves gathering dust that now is actually viable. But I think I definitely want to see, I've been playing a bit of Harleys recently. I want to see if how they now work, how they have to change their play style to deal with that 5+ invuln, because I do think they have potential. I question if they can still work, as we discussed, on some of the like UKTC style terrain. I think maybe that 4 to 5 up is too big a jump into some of the matchups. It just means that you just can't survive. But I think on WTC terrain, they still have a lot of play. Like you said, I think I've always liked Eldar and everybody, but I agreed with you, your teammates, Typhus, that I think fundamentally Harleys were just better. So Eldar were always good, but the Harley build was stronger. So of the two, I'd have always picked them. Whereas now I think it's either a genuine choice or even, like you said, possibly even a genuine mix is viable now. So I think there's some cool play there. And interestingly, nobody seems to, like, everybody's raving about Marines. Everybody's crying about Tyranids. Nobody's really making a big deal about Eldar, which I think they've gone a little bit under the radar. They're like, oh, Swoops, Hawks have been hurt, but I think they've got still some more play in them that people are giving them credit for. So I definitely want to see that.
They're definitely not gone, that's for sure.
Definitely not gone. And then outside of that, I definitely want to see more GSC play. I think they just look, and Orcs and GSC. Interestingly, I think Orcs have got quite a high skill level as well. If you really want to
as
play
a pure melee army, most pure melee armies have high skill cap.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I think those two actually got buffed in the new book. Then they're never going to be considered top singles lists, but for sure on teams, they both have some potential that I think if we don't take them seriously, you'll turn up to the WTC or an event, a team event, and be like, oh, what have we missed here? Because half the teams are running these lists. And you're like, oh, that's what it does. Oh, we missed that completely. So I think there's, outside of the obvious hitters of Marines and a few of the others that clearly won, it's some of the other books that got some love that people haven't latched onto yet. That's what I want to see on the table, because I think it could open up the meta a little bit more than it looks like everybody's doom and glooming about Marines on 75% of the tables.
Yeah. And on a less 40k note, that's something that's running around our Discord. I mean, StatCheck Discord lately a lot. What is your guys' favorite way to cook/serve an egg?
Scrambled.
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 Yeah. Little bit of Parmesan cheese, in there as well. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it's definitely scrambled for me. Yeah. Not fancy enough for poached eggs or anything like that. So
I think you might wake up somebody wanting to impale you on our Discord.
Well, if they've gone fancy with their eggs, they want, I don't know, as you say, poached eggs, or they want whatever. Then
this is awesome. I've managed to make people hate me for something that's not even 40k related. I'm just that good.
Yeah.
Like,
you can feel proud for yourself.
Hated for your choice in eggs. That's good.
Yeah. So thank you guys very much for this talk. I always appreciate actually grabbing some top-notch players that maybe not. You guys get exposure. Come on, like, I will not lie. You guys get exposure, but like,
thanks, Typhus.
Getting chance to actually talk to people, and you guys maybe aren't that much on podcasts, but it's always great to get an insight from like the best brains in the game. So thanks for being here, guys.
No, thank you very much. Thanks for having us.
And maybe till some kind of a next one, I will probably figure out something else and still bother you, Liam, so you can wake up and work very hard, as you can see.
And then fight for office space and webcam space.
Exactly. So thank you guys very much.
Yeah, thanks, Typhus.
And to the next one.